Hey everybody, Brad Geiger here with another episode of Webcomics Confidential, and we've got an email that was written into the old webcomics.com mailbag that has so many great topics attached to it. I'm not sure that I'm not going to come back to this topic or this email in a subsequent episode because I can't imagine I'm going to cover everything that came to mind when I read this email. But man, is it a good one. It's thought-provoking, and it brings up a whole lot of stuff it's really important that we talk about. So without any further ado, let's get to the question at hand, written in by a webcomics.com member who asks, are we in a webcomics bubble? Hitch up your belts. This one's going to be a tough ride. 2 years ago, I started posting humor comics about once a week. I've experienced moderate success. If you add up all my social media, Twitter, Instagram, etc., my comic has over 11,000 followers, although I suspect there's a lot of overlap, blah, blah, blah. In a recent Facebook group, there was a discussion about how to gain your first 10,000 followers. One idea floated was that it used to be that you could put a few of your best comics on a site like 9gag and get a ton of new fans, but that was in the early days of webcomics when there wasn't that much good stuff out there. It's harder now, the thinking goes, because there's just so much competition and no one can follow even all of the good stuff. Oh boy, you know where I'm going with this. So I thought I'd test that out. I created a 9gag post with 7 of my more popular gags and put it up yesterday. So far it has received over 1,600 upvotes, which are basically likes, and has 34 comments, all of them complimentary and praiseworthy. I even made the trending section of 9gags. I was careful to put my URL clearly at the bottom of every single cartoon. You reviewed my website a few months ago and said mostly very good things. I did, and I think your cartoons are awesome. Basically, that was me, by the way, doing an aside. That wasn't him saying this about himself. Basically, I was doing everything right, and that others should do what I'm doing. I think that's also, I don't know if I said everything, but okay. My social media follow buttons are easy to see and click, and there's a subscribe by email button. According to Google Analytics, so far, my 9gag post has given me a bump of about 100 new viewers. That's translated into 1 Facebook follower, 2 Twitter followers, and 5 Instagram followers. I'm not under any illusions that my webcomic is one of the best on the internet or that I deserve to get as many followers as the top guys out there. I'm still learning and growing. However, I do think my stuff is pretty good and getting better. So it's frustrating when I hit a home run, or at least a triple, on a site like 9gag, and I barely get a blip from my followers. People seem to genuinely like my stuff. It's just hard to get them to follow. I fully admit that my webcomic has a lot of room to improve. We get it, you're humble. Blah, 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 blah. Maybe a few years ago, getting a following was easier. You son of a bitch. I'm sorry. I must have glazed over there. Maybe because it's the first time I'm reading that sentence. Maybe a few years ago, getting a follower was easier, but now people are maxed out in how many they will follow, perhaps. Again, apology for the long post. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whenever you get time, blah, 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 blah. Holy cats. Let's unpack all of that. Oh, okay. So, you're a subscriber to webcomics.com and have been for a while. Thank you for that. And you go to this Facebook group for web cartoonists. And you see this kind of, and by the way, I follow a lot of these Facebook groups, mainly to get ideas on what kind of stuff I can be posting for you guys. And I am never disappointed in seeing the amount of absolute horrible advice being given on these Facebook groups. I'm going to rant at you a little bit here. It's going to get better, so don't get upset and leave. Don't leave in a huff. If you want, you can leave in a minute and a half. It's amazing to me as a webcomics.com member that you would go to these Facebook groups and and get caught up in all of the horrible advice and the really bad thinking that's going on over there. I actually, in that thread, I actually saw somebody suggesting that that the popular people on Webtoons, linewebtoons.com, that the popular people probably were buying their followers, and that made me literally guffaw out loud. Because not only is that so very improbable on a site like Webtoons, to me, I can't get my head around how or why that business transaction would or could take place. But it made me laugh out loud because in the early days of webcomics, when everybody was succeeding because it was so fucking easy, we're gonna get to that. When everybody in the early days was just walking on air and just tripping the light fantastic, having success with their webcomics because it was so easy. Back in those days, there was a guy named Bengo, and this came about when the How to Make Webcomics book was published by myself and Scott and Dave and Chris, and he accused us of buying our followers. And I'm not, I don't even know if his site is out there. I shouldn't have even mentioned it by name because I'm worried that, like Candyman, if I do it too many times, he's just gonna appear. And I will note that I do know that it's possible in certain ways to spend money and get followers on social media. I'm not disregarding that, but this whole idea of popular webcomic, instead of looking at the fact that maybe these people are doing something right and maybe there's quality of the comic there and maybe something about the way that they're posting or the writing, the theme, something they've captured, instead of looking at that, dismissing it by saying, well, they're popular because they buy their followers. I'm telling you, if you allow yourself to get caught up in that, and that's going to be a little bit of a theme, allowing ourselves to get caught up. If you allow yourself to get caught up in that, you are going to continue to make these excuses, is what they are, for your own failures, and you're never going to concentrate on the things that it really takes for you to succeed. And in many cases, having been doing this since 2009, I can tell you that in many cases, it's not in the case of this letter writer. I'm just going to say I think your work is really good. I think you're making a few mistakes in how you're presenting it, and we're going to get to that. But in many cases, it's a case of your comic just isn't very good yet, and that's okay. We all started out there. We all started out with a comic that wasn't very good. But if you spend all your time grousing and telling yourself that popular comics are popular because they buy their readers, you're never going to do the hard look at yourself and try to build that quality, and that's where your head should be. So here you go off to this Facebook, and there's a number of them. And this particular one I check in on about a weekly basis, never fails to disappoint, man. I get a good little batch of Schadenfreude every time I take a look at that one. And here this person comes, well-meaning person, seems like a very nice person, says, how did you get your first 10,000 followers? And a lot of the responses, mine included, was, first 10,000? What are you talking about? And then a bunch of people start weighing in on what you should do. And one of those ideas was, like you said, post on 9gag. And so, instead of taking what I'm going to just say it, instead of listening to me, all right, which a subscription you pay for, instead of listening to the stuff that I've been writing about for a good solid 2 years now, I'm sorry, I've got a lot of faults. I miss a lot of stuff. I've been ahead of the curve on this from day one. Instead of listening to the stuff that I've been posting about, you go off galloping off. I've gotta get those 10,000 readers. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna post on 9gag. And you post on 9gag, and you completely miss the point that it ain't about getting 10,000 followers. It ain't about that anymore. It was about 10,000 followers when we were an ad-driven business, but webcomics is officially, I'm going to call it official now. I've been tap dancing around this. I'm going to call it official. We're officially in the post-advertising age, folks. When CBS launches Star Trek, and the only way that you can get it is on a subscription system, along with Netflix and Hulu and about 100 to Crunchyroll, going on to 100 more. This is where the future's at, pal. Readers don't want to pay for ads? Fine, I'm doing way better on a subscription service than I ever did on advertising. This is nothing but good news for you, but we've got to leave that old system. And that idea of trying to get 10,000 followers is squarely where the thinking was 10 years ago. You're a good 10 years behind the curve if you're focused on trying to get 10,000 followers. Okay, big mouth. You're sitting there saying, what should I be focused on? Well, you should be focused on getting a solid social media base, and that's different from 10,000 followers. Think about it. If you had 10,000 people on Twitter, I'd be jumping up and down for you. That's not to say that that's not important. It's where your focus lies. This is a very, very important mental place to get into. You're not aiming for a number. I don't know what it is about cartoonists. We're always looking for a magic number. How many page views equals success was the question that I was answering since the time I started Webcomics.com. How many page views equals success? If I have so many people coming to my site, how many of those are going to buy a book? What's my magic numbers? This ain't about magic numbers. You should not be trying to get to 10,000 followers. If you get there, fantastic. It means you're doing something very right, but that's not where your focus should be. Do you understand the difference? The difference is you ought to be right now. Let me just give you an aside right now. I cannot remember the last time I opened up Google Analytics. That's not a brag. That's not a, hey, look at me, Mr. Big Shot. That is one guy telling another person, that is where my head is at right now. I don't know what my site traffic is, and I don't freaking care what my site traffic is. I haven't opened up Google Analytics. I don't even know if I still got it. I may just take it off. It's so unimportant to me. All right? I don't care if I don't care if I ever get 10,000 followers. It's not where the game is anymore. Okay? I'll tell you how many Twitter followers I've got. And again, that's different. So here's the difference I want you to start to think about. You're not worried about getting 10,000 readers. You are worried now about generating a good, solid social media following. And I don't care the number, because it doesn't matter, the number. What it matters is the passion. You want those people to be good, solid fans. You want them to be readers. You want them to be interested in what you're doing. Okay? And I don't care what the number is. I've said it 100 times on webcomics.com posts and on Webcomics Confidential. I know people who have huge readerships whose businesses are struggling. And I know people who have a very finite readership whose businesses are going great, because it has to do with the passion and the community that you've built. So instead of taking that 10,000 readers idea and putting that top of mind, what you should be doing is focusing on two areas that I've posted about on webcomics.com consistently over the last 2 years: social media and crowdfunding. That's where your focus should be. Now, I know there's a lot of you who are already arguing with me. I can hear you. I can hear you right through the thing here. I get it. You're saying, well, social media, that's about getting followers. Social media is all about getting followers. Social media is about getting followers. It's also about getting shares and likes and a viral expanse of your promotional reach. And there's a lot of things that you can do there once you develop it. But if you, right now, and this is one thing I'm going to say about our letter writer specifically, you're doing social media the way I would have loved to have seen it done 10 years ago. You have not adjusted to the things that we've been talking about on webcomics.com. We're going to get to that in a minute, because I think it's indicative of where a lot of people's brains are at right now. Okay, so don't get confused here. When I denigrate this idea of trying to get your first 10,000 readers and then tell you that you should be getting people on social media, those are two very, very different things. And we're gonna it's weird because you're talking about groups of people in each case. But I think if you listen to what I'm saying, you'll hopefully, if I do a good job of communicating, and tell me if I'm not, but hopefully, and I know you will tell me, hopefully you'll understand why I get so passionate about this whole idea of I'm going to put reading glasses on. You guys know I'm old. I'm going to put my glasses on and go through that whole thing again. Let me just find it up here. So I tested that out. I created a 9-gag post with 7 of my more popular gags and put it up yesterday, and you got exactly what you deserved. By the way, for one post, you got more than you deserved. You should be laughing yourself silly. You got Twitter followers, you got Facebook followers, you got Instagram. What are you asking for one freaking social media post? And granted, it trended on 9gag. That's wonderful. It was one post. You need to be doing that next week, and the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that. And we're going to talk about how you should be doing it so you get better results. Because I see on your Twitter and your Facebook that you are posting your stuff on social media. You're doing it in such a way that I think we can tweak that a little bit and make that work better. But your letter, and I'm going to be a little unfair probably, and I apologize. Your letter basically read to me like I hit the famous button one time and I'm not famous and something's broken. We're in a webcomics bubble. We're in a webcomics bubble. I did it. Just, they said post on 9gag. I posted on 9gag, and I'm not famous yet. Guys, social media doesn't work on one post. I wish it did. This is something that you build over and over and over again. That's one holdover that I will say from advertising business model webcomics: frequent, significant, and consistent. Those 3 factors work on social media too. Frequent, consistent, significant. One post is not going to make you famous. I'm sorry. Even though you trended, that's wonderful. Now do it again. And you did it with 7. You're not going to be. The law of averages. You're going to run out of material, right? So next time, don't post 7. Next time, post 1. 7 is great for a little intro, but in your subsequent posts, 1 is fine. Especially this guy we're talking about is a single panel cartoonist. The hardest thing in the world to do well, in my opinion, a humorous single panel cartoon is the highest level of humor in comics, in my opinion. Trying to do that in one panel is the hardest thing I've ever tried to do. Maybe I just don't have the brain for it. But I have nothing but the highest respect for anyone that can do a single panel comic. By the way, single panel comics are tailor made for social media. They're share worthy. They're like they're the equivalent of a meme. All right. You should be able to be generating tons of following on social media just by posting one thing at a time. And by the way, I know, I can hear you. I can hear you. You're saying that's what I'm doing. You're doing it 10 years. You're doing it the way I would have told you to do it 10 years ago. I'm going to get to that. Stay in your seat. So social media. So here's the deal. In fact, that's a perfect segue. I made little notes here. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place today because I'm super passionate about this topic. Am I getting everything? Okay, crowdfunding. We got to talk about crowdfunding at the end. Remind me to say crowdfunding at the end. Social media. So what are you doing wrong on social media? Everything about your social media that I saw it was designed to lead readers to the site. It's not about driving readers to your site anymore, man. It's really not. It's about getting. I hate to use this phrase because it turns my stomach. It's about getting your work out there. There, I said it. But there's no other phrase that's going to convey this as well as that. It's about getting your work out on every social media that you feel comfortable, that you think you can handle. If you do good on 9gag, trust me, look at webcomics.com post from a good 3 years ago. Imgur or Imager, Imgur. If you do well on 9gag, you're going to do great on Imgur or Imager. But it's not about linking back to the site. And in fact, there's a lot of stuff. I'm not so sure how solidly I believe this. But I believe it enough to share it with you here. There's a lot of people that will swear on their mother's graves that putting a hyperlink, putting a URL into a Facebook post will dampen the amount of times that it gets shared due to Facebook's algorithm. The story goes, Facebook wants to keep you on their site and they don't want you leaving, and so posts that have a URL in it don't travel as well, don't go as viral as ones that don't. I'm looking at all your posts. Everything is designed to be clicking back to the site. It ain't about clicking back to the site anymore. It's the whole social media, your Twitter feed is now your site. For better or for worse, that's where we're at. Your Facebook feed is your site. It's not about drawing them back. We're going to get to the second half of that in a minute because you're going to remind me about that word. What you should be doing, especially with a single panel comic, you should be looking into the image sizes, particularly of Twitter and Facebook, but of all the social media you decide to use, Twitter, Facebook, you should be doing Instagram, Imgur, 9gag for sure. With a single panel comic, I would be putting a little bit of time aside, and if you're only doing once a week, this ought to be a piece of cake. Certainly not as hard as you have it in webcomics compared to when I started doing this in 2000. We were all floating on air. The thing I want you to know about social media is what you should be making that comic, cropping it, recropping it, doing whatever you need to do with it so that it appears on each of those social media without being cropped. And with no link. No link. All right? You're going to have all of your pertinent information on like your Twitter profile page, your Instagram profile page, and your Facebook, on and on and on. You're going to have that there. But you're not going to put it on each individual post. And I want you to try this for a little while and see if you can chart a difference. See if you start to get shared more. The idea is not to share a link, but to share an image. And I want that image, especially for someone doing a single panel comic, this should be a piece of cake for you. I want that image to appear on each of your social media feeds without being cropped. And you can look up image aspect ratios for each of the main social medias and get those numbers very easily. That's the game now on social media. It's not about driving people to your site anymore. Driving people to your site is a nice plus, but that's not where the game is. The game is now you want to be building that Twitter following and the way to do that is by sharing those images and by the way, there's a lot of verbiage in your social media tweets that also indicate that your head is at driving people to the site. You should be doing very much in the same way that you prepare a meme to be posted on Imgur. Take a look at what's going on over there. You can learn a lot about posting comics by taking a look at what's being done on Imgur or Imager. I really don't know. And by the way, I don't know whether it's GIF or GIF either, and I don't care. But you should be just putting a little line there, maybe a bump note punchline or a wry little lead in or just a little something there But not about, and I'm going to go against the grain with this one. Other than maybe a couple topic hashtags, take it easy on the hashtags. Maybe a couple topics, but choose if you're going to use hashtags. My advice is use them wisely. Use words that you think people might search and mistakenly find your thing and be happy with the results. In other words, I would never hashtag one of my comics Evil Inc. Hashtag Evil Inc. Who's going to search for Evil Inc.? I might hashtag it any number of things, superhero, supervillain, but I am not going to hashtag it with the name of my comic. Who's going to look for that? So be very careful with how you're presenting that. The whole idea, here's where your head should be at. You should be putting that stuff out on Twitter with the whole idea that somebody else takes that cartoon, puts it on their feed, and expresses themselves through it. This is how I'm feeling today. This is what I think is funny today, and nothing else. It's almost like the idea of a greeting card. Okay, you make a greeting card and you give it to somebody so that they can say happy birthday in an interesting way. That's how you should be brain modeling yourself in your social media feed with your cartoons. You should be putting stuff out there almost, really, honest to God, that just hit me just now. Your Twitter feed, your Facebook feed should be like you're building a rack of greeting cards. Here's something for you to take and put on your feed that will make you look really funny today. Here's another thing that will express a certain thing today. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not about you. It's about getting your stuff out onto other people's Twitter feeds so that they can be the funny one that day. All right. Now, of course, having your URL as part of the image, nothing but good practice. Having a copyright notation in there, of course. All of that stuff is good. But the really important thing is that they share it. And when they share that thing, the important part is not your URL that's part of the image, but your Twitter handle or your Facebook notation, that people who look at that person. Joey put your comic up with the scales, right? And Joey puts it up, and he's really funny on his Twitter follow. Somebody's going to look at that, and they're going to follow you, so next time they can be the funny one. That's the transaction you want to happen, okay? Now, everything that I said is great, except it doesn't make money happen, okay? So where's the missing part? Well, that's that word that you were going to remind me not to forget. You already forgot. It's okay. I remembered for you. And that's crowdfunding. Now, again, you're doing crowdfunding, and you're doing crowdfunding, thank goodness, because I would have ripped into you. You're doing crowdfunding in a way that I would have suggested, and you've got exclusive content, and you've got very reasonable rewards, okay? And you're struggling, okay? That's something that I really want to delve into, and I've got no magic wand for you, okay? But I will say this: I think that you need to promote that Patreon in your social media feeds more. Maybe with a little teaser, a teaser, like a closely cropped teaser images of some of the bonus stuff, and you should be putting that up on your social media just as regularly as you do anything else. It's fair game. If you want to see this, become a Patreon backer. By all means, and I'm seeing you're doing this a little bit, it's a good thing to do. Do tout the number of comics and the amount of reading that they can do for free. Once they become a Patreon backer, they can get access to so many X number of exclusive comics. That's only going to go up as time goes by. You should be doing whatever you can to feed out that exclusives roster as much as possible, because I really do think that's where the future is. But you need to be focused a little bit more on crowdfunding than you are right now. Patreon is one thing. Patreon is believe me, I'm a huge Patreon supporter, but I'm also looking when I do go to your site. I don't see any I'm wondering, do you not have enough stuff for a print collection yet? Because I don't see any Kickstarters. I don't see any. I see a lot of PDF ebooks, which is fine, but it's base level stuff that's never going to bring in serious amounts of money. I don't see any Kickstarter books. And if you've got the kind of social media following that you've already got, which is respectful, the numbers that you gave me, what was it, 11K, 15K? Those are respectable numbers. You should be able to carry a modest Kickstarter at this point. You should be starting to focus on books, on Kickstarters, on merchandise, things of that nature. That should be you should not be spending the amount of time that you should not be getting the mind space that you've already given to obsessing over things like webcomics bubbles and 10,000 followers. You should be right now collecting quotes from a printer to figure out your Kickstarter for your book. Those things are going to produce results, or hopefully. I mean, who knows how some of this stuff is going to go, but I'm pretty confident in the quality of your work. I think people are going to like that in a print collection. So your focus should be on doing social media a little smarter than what you're doing right now. And by the way, I'm sorry, I'm my biggest fan sometimes, but that whole idea of putting yourself in the mental space of building a greeting card rack as your Twitter feed or as your Facebook feed or Instagram or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Putting something out there that someone else can take and put on their feed to look funny that day. I think that's the mental place to be. That should guide all of your decisions when you're making these posts. That should guide your hashtag. That should guide whatever text read-in you put there. That should guide the way you crop that image so that it doesn't get cropped. The way you size the image so it doesn't get cropped. Or crop the image if it's Patreon exclusive. That should be your guiding thought, and crowdfunding. And like I said, I was disappointed to see that your Patreon isn't doing better. But I think we do have to remember you're only doing it once a week. You've only been doing it for 2 years at once a week. That's actually not that bad for a very pulled back kind of frequency. Okay. But don't get downhearted. Don't get despondent. I think some of the things I really want to see whether some of these things that I'm talking about has a positive effect for you, because there's definitely, it feels like there's something that if we just make a couple of tweaks, we can have some really good positive effects, and won't chase you running in circles like this Facebook group did. Making you obsess over webcomics bubbles and 10,000 followers. But those are the two things I want you to focus on right now. And anyone else who has felt this way, anyone else who's felt that they don't have enough followers, they're struggling for this reason or another reason, I want you to think about where we are in webcomics right now. We are in a post-advertising age, and as I've written a million times on the site, it's no longer about driving traffic to your site. It's about getting shares on Twitter. Now, how does that link up to crowdfunding? Because the next time that you post that Patreon promo or that Kickstarter announcement, hopefully you've got so many people that are going to see that announcement because they've shared your earlier stuff that you can get the ball rolling, and they can say, oh yeah, I remember this guy. I bet you I'd love a book of his. That's where I think it is. I think the whole idea now is building up a strong social media presence. And by the way, again, let's not get confused. That's not about 10,000 followers. That could be 10 followers if they're passionate followers. And if those people have strong social media of their own, so much the better. I could easily envision a case where I could have 10 followers on a Twitter account, and be doing much, much better than someone who has 1,000. And it all depends on who those 10 are. If you can get your head around that, you'll see why I'm passionate about not getting wrapped up into 10,000 followers. What you want is a robust and passionate group of people who are following you on social media. And I don't care how many they are, as long as they're passionate. And how are you going to do that? One at a time. Do it exactly. But here's the mistake you made with 9gag. You did it once and then got disappointed and figured, well, I'm not going to do this again. I didn't get famous. You keep doing. You had really, if you were trending on 9gag, that's a home run. Now do it next week, and do it the week after that, and do it the week after that, and do it the week after that. Okay, and keep building that up. The whole idea, your end game here, is that when you do mention Patreon, you mention to a lot of people who are already paying attention because they like that other thing you did. When you do mention a Kickstarter on Twitter, all those people on your Twitter feed who were sharing based on that greeting card appeal get that message. That's your end game. It's not about driving people to your site. Stop linking to your site. You can, again, you can definitely have that as part of your image. I'm not saying that driving people to your site is a bad thing. It's no longer the priority that it was 10 years ago. Okay? So that's my thoughts on that. Holy cats. I'm literally sitting here sweating. And I know that I haven't touched on, I'm gonna turn this microphone off, and I'm going to realize that there's another 10 things that I wish I would have said. So I am almost going to guarantee we come back to this. Oh, by the way, one of these days, you really want to see me work up a sweat? Tell me again how easy it was for web cartoonists to do this back in 2000, before we even had social media. Here's the headline. How easy it was for us back in 2000 and 2001. We didn't even have social media. I'll grant you that there were fewer people doing webcomics. That's granted. We'll take that as read, Your Honor. We didn't have Twitter. We didn't have any of the stuff and we didn't have it for years and years and years. When the first How to Make Webcomics book came out, there was no Twitter, no Facebook. Think about that for a second. And then tell me how easy we had it. Holy shnikes. You guys have no, I'm sorry, I'm going to get old, man. Look, a liver spot just exploded on my head. You guys have no idea how easy you got it. There are more webcomics? Absolutely. There's a worse signal to noise ratio than ever before? Absolutely. Your chances, as you found out, here's the thing, you had it presented to you and you didn't look at it and you didn't learn from it. You already saw for yourself how easy it is to cut through the signal with noise. Or cut through the noise with signal, sorry. By trending on 9gag, you already saw how easy it was. With one post, with 7 comics, you got a huge bump on 9gag. And where you made your mistake in thinking that was going to make you famous overnight, the bigger mistake you made is not realizing that, holy cats, you have the ability to do this. Now go out and do it regularly. That's the and know that in 2002, my ability to have done the same or done similar was zero, was nil, was zilch. I couldn't have done that if I would have engineered, if I would have done what Bengo thought I was doing and bought followers. Couldn't have done it. Could not have done it. That's how easy it wasn't. When we started, and please, other than the fact that I'm personally insulted when people tell me how easy we had it back in the day, don't allow yourself to get into that mindscape, because it takes your focus off of where it's supposed to be. You're going to sit there and feel sorry for yourself and convince yourself that if you would have started 10 years earlier or been born a little bit different time, then it would have been so easy. You're taking your focus off of where it belongs, man, and that's the most dangerous thing. Listen, keep going to these Facebook groups. Keep getting horrible advice. Keep letting your focus get off the ball. Don't come crying to me. But for the love of God, after you're done with all that, put your head on straight and put your focus back on where it's supposed to be. Social media and crowdfunding. That's the entire game. That's where it is right now. And by the way, not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. That is absolutely good news for you. All you've got to do is be a little bit smarter on how you're making it work. Okay, that's my thoughts. Boy, oh boy, you guys are. I guarantee there's somebody already halfway through their comments on webcomics.com. But by all means, sign on and tell me I'm full of shit. Maybe I am. Hey, maybe you've seen me on this podcast before. I'll admit it if I'm full of it. Don't think I am this time. But by all means, I'm going to be happy to listen to you talk and give it some serious consideration. If you do, come on over to webcomics.com, hit those comments, let me know what you think. Until then, this is Webcomics Confidential, and I'm Brad Geiger, and we'll see you next time.